readers, welcome back to my channel, Lila Wanders and Reads. Lee here, and welcome to my July reading recap. I don't even know how I did this, 17 books this month, and several of them are pretty short, so maybe that's why, but not all of them were. Anywho, I'm going to talk about them, not going to read the blurbs on all of them, just talk a little bit about them and how they made me feel as we get closer. I'm going to start with the end of the month, which is really close in my memory, and as we get closer to the beginning of the month, it will have faded a bit. So, one of the books, the last book that I read in July, is the one that I am most passionate about, and not in a good way. And that came as a surprise to me because it's Kristin Hannah's Comfort and Joy. I love Kristin Hannah as an author, but the more I think about this, the angrier I get. This is only the second book that I've read where this was a trope, if you can call it that, because it's not common, that I've seen. But please don't try to sell me a book where a sister sleeps with her sister's husband and the whole book is about how they should make up. Because no, I'm not down for that. No, it's unforgivable to me. The sister is supposed to be the closest person to you, and just because you had a sisterhood together, your sister betrayed that sisterhood by sleeping with your husband in your own bed, and then they had the fucking balls to come to you pregnant and offer you a wedding invitation and ask, why are you so fucking mad? She didn't ask that. She knew why she was mad, but it infuriates me. So I cannot recommend this. I may go back and give it 1 star because absolutely not. Unacceptable. Stop trying to make this thing a thing. Granted, she doesn't make it a thing in her later writing, but this just makes me livid. Anywho, this week, the long list for the Booker Prize was announced, and I'm going to set this aside somewhere else because I read one of the books on the long list, and that is Universality by Natasha Brown. This is a little bit of a different read for me. I had to keep in mind that it was satire. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it much more than I enjoyed Comfort and Joy, which I did not enjoy. So, had a good time with this. Look forward to reading the rest of the Booker long list. One of the things I plan to do while I go through the long list, which will be most of August, is pepper them with some books that are light, which is what I thought I was doing with this. Didn't know it would leave me outraged. But prior to Universality, I needed a palate cleanse, so I read Lynn Painter's Made for Each Other. This is kind of a sort of enemies to lover trope. Mostly it's a didn't know each other to fake dating. Yes, it's more of a fake dating to lovers. So, cute, he's a rich guy, she's a maid, she decides to stay in his room, in his home, while her apartment is being de-infested. He doesn't know she's there because he's off somewhere. Anyway, his parents show up, think she's his girlfriend, and shenanigans ensue. Fun read. The book prior to that, I'm going from 17 down to 1, so I'm going to stop trying to say before that or after that. But the next book that I'm going to talk about is a book that one of the YouTubers that I follow, said he thought would win the Booker Prize, but it didn't even make the long list. And actually, I'm kind of surprised by that. Even though this book a lot of it went over my head, I did enjoy The Book of Records by Madeleine Thien for the most part. It talks a lot about philosophy. It reminded me a little bit of Sophie's World, except for I felt it was just barely out of my reach. But there are a lot of parts that I enjoyed. I learned stuff, and if you are into literary fiction, I'd recommend giving this a shot. Next up is one I was going to do a whole separate video about, not for this book, but this subject, and that is Tradwives, because I love reality TV, I love social media, and Everyone Is Lying to You by Joe Piazza was, they called it Gone Girl, but make it Trad Wives. Yes, I totally agree. I think Gone Girl was a little better, a little faster paced than this. This one dragged to me in the middle a little bit, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I haven't read Gone Girl in a long time, so I don't really remember. But this was fun. Again, dragged a little bit towards the middle, but if you're looking for kind of a Gone Girl-ish thriller, I'd give this a shot. Oh, Trad Wives, too. Whew. This one was another miss for me. This is Sunburn, a novel by Chloe Michelle Howarth. This is a debut novel about a young girl's coming of age and coming into her sexuality. What bothered me about this, and I struggled through this until I finished, because I wanted to see how it ended, and it ended just kind of flat for me. Where I struggled was that this entire book is told from Lucy's point of view. You're in Lucy's head the entire time, and God, I don't ever want to be a teenage girl again, and I don't want to be in my own head that much. I want action, different POVs when I'm reading, and if that's what I want. That's what I want. Different POVs when I'm reading. I don't want to be inside one person's head. It was chaotic. It was just a mess, and I could not really enjoy it, but I finished it. So Barnes & Noble last month was having a buy one, get one 50% off romance paperbacks. So I picked up a book I had looked at before but never bought, and that is Kennedy Ryan's Before I Let Go. This was a nice read. I look forward to reading the others in the what's now a trilogy. This was told from two different POVs, hers and his, and I appreciated that. So, new for me, good read, much better than Sunburn. Prior to that, I read A Resistance of Witches, by Morgan Ryan. It combines two of my favorite things, witches and World War II. And in this, a woman has to find this book of magic that in the wrong hands could destroy the world. And there's a betrayal and sacrifice. Really, really fun read. My memory's starting to fade. I did a reread this month of I Know What You Did by Last Summer, because the movie was coming out and is out, and I went to go see it. But before I went to go see it, I watched the original movie, and then I read the original 1973 version. This version was published in 1975. She wrote it, copyright 1973. First of all, they couldn't have made the movie exactly on the book and still have the movie be a slasher, probably. I loved this kind of psychological warfare that happened in the book, but this was written in 1973, and oof, the misogyny, the self-internalized misogyny, the body shaming, the thinking someone's bad because they look a certain way. I am certain if Lois Duncan was alive and still writing, she would have evolved in her writing. She did not write as much after her daughter was murdered, and that makes me sad. However, those things aside, it's still a really good book with a really good plot. I loved the story. Another fun time was a book that took me a minute to get in, as These Summer Storms by Sarah MacLean. One of the children has been kicked out of the family for years, 5 years, I think. The dad dies. She's come back. She's just going to dip in, dip out, or so she thinks. But no, in his will, the dad has made one last claim to get all these kids and his wife under his thumb from beyond the grave. This was really fun. It was just a family story, and a story about everything that can go wrong in a dysfunctional family. Loved it. Oh, and they were very rich. This month I did a reread of Tiffany D. Jackson's Monday's Not Coming. I'd read this for book club, felt like I had to do a reread because I nominated it, and I don't regret it, except my poor book is falling apart. I absolutely love this even more the second time. This is a combination of both of my readings tabs. This is a book that shines a light on how boys and girls of color do not get the same recognition when they're missing, or attention when they're missing, as white kids do. And just kind of, in this story, Claudia's best friend Monday disappears and no one notices. And that's all I can say about this. I highly recommend this. This is a YA book. Anybody can and should read it. Absolutely loved it. The next book I had fun with, actually ended up talking about it with an online book club last week, and I sent a copy to a friend, was The Ghostwriter by Julie Clark. This is a thriller-ish. It's not really that thrilling. It's more like a mystery. Olivia has spent her whole life trying to keep her past, specifically her father, out of her professional life. No one knows about him. Her agent doesn't even know about him, but he's decided to hire her as a ghostwriter to tell the truth about what really happened back in 1975 when, although he was never accused, everyone thinks he killed his brother and sister. This is a rare novel in which I did not like Olivia, the main character, at all, but I loved the story, especially the flashbacks to 1975, and this was just overall, it had some quirks, but overall, a really good time. I started off the month pretty heavy, so then I went into a 2-book light phase. One of those was Ashley Poston's Sounds Like Love. One of the things I love about Ashley Poston is how she adds magical realism to her romances, and I am here for that every day of the week. This one was no different. She's a songwriter, but she's in a block right now. He's an ex-boy band member, bad boy, and all of a sudden they get a melody in their head, and the only way they can figure out how to get it out is to write that song together. So, fun book, very light, loved it. Enemies to Lovers, Sarah Adams. I tell you right now, I think I've only kind of didn't like one book by Sarah Adams, and that was just, I think it was just a one-off, because I enjoyed The Enemy. Like I said, Enemies to Lovers, come back to, somebody's getting married, I think, and just laugh out loud funny. I'm starting to, and this is what I think Sarah Adams is my Taco Bell soulmate, because she talks about eating soft tacos, no lettuce, which I love, and how the main character has been trying to recreate the flavor of their beef for years and can't do it, and me either. I feel vindicated about that. I've been trying to remake the Mexi Melt, nothing works. Turns out it's the Taco Bell cracked beef. Anywho, not the point. Stuart Neville has started a trilogy called Blood Like Mine. I read this. This is a unique vampire tale. But again, did not like the main character. And this is one where, although I didn't DNF, I'm not going to go forward because I disliked the main character so much I don't care what happens next. I liked the daughter, who is the vampire, but just okay. If you are looking for a good vampire read, I would say this is decent. But I did not like the main character, so if you're on a plane, it's fine. It's fine. This year is the 50th anniversary of Jaws. I don't know if you can see it. I've got some bottles of wine that they were selling at World Market. I think they're all gone now. I kept these to have. And I read for the first time Jaws. And this read a little bit slowly for me, probably because it was written in the early 70s. It reminded me a bit of Stephen King's writing style, probably because it was written in the early 70s, early mid 70s, just like when Stephen King was in his prime. But I also watched the movie twice, and there are some things that I think would have been great in the movie, but didn't make it in there. Specifically, this one part that I can't tell you about without spoiling. And then the very end, which the ending in the book is completely different. What I also appreciated is he's in the introduction, written by Peter Benchley. He said Richard Zanuck said to him, paraphrasing, "This picture is going to be an A to Z adventure story. A straight line. So we want you to take out all the romance stuff, all the mafia stuff, and all the stuff that'll just be distracting. You, who have never read Jaws, you who have only seen the movie, I can see you frowning. I can hear you say to yourself, romance? Mafia? What's he talking about? Where's all that stuff? Read on, please, and discover for yourself." I liked the movie Jaws, but I really liked the book Jaws. If it bogged down a little bit for me, it's because it is as old as I am. Gosh, 1974, so it's younger than me. But it's because it's 50 years old, and writing changes, and what is fast writing-wise changes as all. Okay, finally, I started out the month with a book I had avoided in hard copy because the blurb on the back just didn't seem that interesting to me. But I read an article with Chris Whitaker featured, and he talked about how a therapist or someone had told him, take your trauma and write it down as though it's fiction. Now, I don't know if everything in here is specific to him, but he talks about some of the trauma that he had in real life. And so I said, well, I'll give this a shot. I actually liked this book quite a bit, but in spite of the blurb on the back, which just talks about Patch, it doesn't talk about the fact that Patch is not the only hero in this book. In fact, in my opinion, there's someone else who is far more heroic in this book that doesn't get the attention on the blurb that it deserves. I end up really liking it. I appreciate it. It spans decades. And Patch was probably my least favorite character. There were a lot more. I didn't hate him. I didn't dislike him. He was just, of the characters, not my favorite. So, that is it. That was a long month, 17 books. We'll see what August brings. And in August, I will mostly be reading, probably, the books on the Booker Prize long list. There are 13 of them. I am on book number 2 right now. One of them has not been published, and I've got 4 coming from the UK. So I'll probably spill over into September in my Booker Prize reading, because I am going to pepper them with non-Booker long list books. Anywho, that's it for me today. And as always, if you stuck with me this far, I'd love to hear what you have to say about any of these books down in the comments below. I'd just love to hear from you. And as always, thank you for sticking with me on my journey. Happy reading!